Hello and welcome. What the fuck? We'll just restart that. Blip, 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 blip. Here we go. Hello and welcome to Three's a Crime, a true crime podcast. I'm Tori.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Lindsay.
And that's our intro.
Here we are professional podcasters.
We're podcasters, bitches.
An announcement.
An announcement. Well, hi, wait, hang on.
Hi, everybody. Announcement.
We have an announcement. I need like a gavel. Cuckoo. So we have an announcement. So our announcement is we are going to be scaling back our episode releases, which is a huge bummer, but there is a good reason behind it. And the good reason, we basically need a minute to get ahead. Is like really what we need. We need like a second to get ahead. So we are going to start releasing episodes every other week now in hopes that we can we're still going to record the same amount, research the same amount, and still have things available so that we won't be scrambling so much. And also it gives us more time to research.
And we want to make sure that whatever we're putting out there for you is the best content. Not
we want quality.
Yeah.
Bitches.
Quantity. Son of a nutcracker. Quality over quantity.
Yeah.
We will still be doing an extra Patreon episode, and Patrons will still get their episodes early. For right now, that's what we're going to do. And that's a huge bummer, and we don't love it, but it's for a good reason.
It's for, mental health.
It's not easy for us to take a break from it because we don't want to.
We've been fighting this idea.
We've been fighting it for a while.
The entire year we've been.
Yes. But we've been struggling.
Yeah.
So.
Right. And we want to make sure that, you guys get everything on time. And we've had, for looking back over our first year, it has been
a shit show.
I'm having no idea what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then, kind of figuring it out. And just when we would get to a good place, the hard drive stopped working. Mm-hmm. The first one, or the
first time. Or Pebbles ate the cord.
Yeah. So it was Pebbles eating cords and whatever. And then we've all had, deaths in the family and we haven't taken, we literally have not taken a break from this entire first year.
We just need to catch up to ourselves.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we'll be able to have more content later. We just need a minute to catch up.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you have already or during this time go through our little catalog that we have so far, you can always go over to Patreon and there are extra episodes that are there that you can also binge.
Yes.
So it won't be forever.
No. We love you.
We love you.
But yeah, if we all of the sudden got 1 million Patreons and then it was hey, we don't all have to work. Oh my God, we were at dinner the other night and McKenna, my boss's girlfriend, who now listens to our podcast, was talking about us, and one of the people that was at dinner was like, oh wait, who is it? And she says, Three's a Crime. So he's looking it up and she goes, because they are professional podcasters.
Oh, so sweet.
Makes me happy.
I love
Thanks,
that.
McKenna.
Yeah. Lindsay got us prezzies for Christmas, and we're opening them on air.
They're very late.
Oh, that's adorable.
Lindsay, thank you. That's for your crystals. It'll charge them and clear them while holding your crystals.
I knew it was gonna be something woo-woo. Oh, yay!
Yay!
Yay! Thank you, Lindsey.
Thank you!
Yeah, Mom.
Oh my. It's not delivery, it's depression.
I didn't know what other stickers to get you, but I knew that needed
That
to
is
happen.
the one that I needed 1,000%.
They told me to get that for you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Like, my favorite line in Tombstone is obviously this one, which I've talked about multiple times. I've never seen anything with this line on it.
It says, I have 2 guns.
One for each of you.
Yeah, because Lowell from Wings comes up to him and he's like,
Yep.
"You're so drunk you're probably seeing double." And Val Kilmer goes, "I have 2 guns, one for each of you." And it makes me laugh every single time.
Okay.
Hello, welcome,
Hello.
bitch. Yes.
Bitch.
I didn't mean that aggressively.
You sounded it like Polly. You sounded it?
You sounded it.
Oh, I did.
You sounded it like Polly Shore.
Bitches.
Welcome to your true crime podcast you're listening to today.
Your favorite true crime podcast.
We're
We're back.
here, bitches.
We're here. Let's just hop right into it. This is the story.
All about how my life got turned, flipped upside down.
This is the story of Oedipus Kemper. Michael thought of that. He's like, you should name the show Oedipus Kemper. So if you don't know, Oedipus complex means you're in an unhealthy love with your mother.
That they want to fuck their mothers
Have
and
sex
kill
with
their
their mother.
fathers.
Yeah, so. Edmund Emil Kemper III. Yeah, his fucking
That's
middle
why
name
you
is Emil.
Emil.
His
I
middle
was
name
like,
is Emil.
but this was a happy joke. Now it's not. I make sense now. Makes
His middle
sense.
name is Emil. When I saw that, I was like, are you fucking joking?
Maybe that's why
I was
he haunts you
pissed,
more,
yeah.
like more than the others.
So, Edmund Emil Kemper III. So, our story starts on August 27th, 1964, when police in North Fork, California receive an interesting phone call. On the other end is a 15-year-old boy who tells them he just murdered his grandparents.
Oh, great.
So North Fork, California is a ton of farmland. It's really in the middle of nowhere. And when police get this phone call, they're like, what?
Pardon?
I'm sorry.
Sir?
Can you repeat yourself?
Ma'am?
This is not a call they're used to getting. They're like, this is not something that happens here. What the fuck? So the only crime they really had at this point in their area was thefts, disturbances, juvenile issues, but no one calling in saying they just murdered 2 people. So they drive out to the caller's location, and standing before them, waiting patiently to be taken into police custody, is a 6'4", 15-year-old Edmund Emil Kemper.
Jesus Christ, that's terrifying. 6'4", 15-year-old.
6'4", 15-year-old. Like,
He's not a small.
No, I'm just imagining those long, gangly limbs just so big.
So the police obviously place him under arrest as he literally just admitted to killing 2 people. And their first question is, why the fuck did you kill your 2 grandparents? Why? And he calmly tells them his side of the story.
Oh, God.
He says, he was sitting at the kitchen table with his grandmother Maud while she was writing a children's book. When they got into... That was like what she did. She wrote children's books.
Okay,
You're like, what a weird fucking extra.
Maud and then...
Maud writing a children's book.
Okay.
She was apparently right at the end of this children's book she was writing.
Did she have any that were published? Like, can you find
I
Maud
don't know.
Kemper children's book?
Let's look. I'll look while you
Kemper
tell
children's
us.
book. So he's sitting at the kitchen table with his grandmother while she's writing a children's book when they get into an argument where she was trying to take away a gun that his grandfather had given him for Christmas to use for hunting. So they get into an argument, and so enraged, Ed storms off, grabs this rifle, which had recently been confiscated because he was using it to shoot animals. So his grandparents were like, quit fucking shooting animals. So they hit it or, take it away from him.
Quit being a dick.
But he's pissed, so he goes and gets this rifle. He re-enters the kitchen, looks his grandmother right in the face, and she says, quote, "Oh, you'd better not be shooting at the birds again." And he lifted the rifle and shot his grandmother in the head before firing twice more into her chest. Some accounts mention that she also suffered some stab wounds with a kitchen knife, but Ed then took his rifle, went outside, and waited for his grandfather, Edmund Emil Kemper Sr., who had been out grocery shopping that day. And when he returned, Ed shot him in the driveway right next to his car. He told police that he was unsure of what to do next, so he called his mom. His mom was like, you should call the police.
Oh, my God. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what she said. She said, you should call the police. So that's why he called them. When questioned, he said, quote, he just wanted to see what it felt like to kill grandma.
Oh.
And testified that he killed his grandfather so that he would not have to find out that his wife was dead and that he would be angry at Ed for what he had done. So remember, Ed is a minor. He's 15 years old. However, law enforcement is so shooketh by what he has just told them that
You're in for one today, folks.
Well, and, I mean, he's huge. He doesn't look like a 15-year-old.
Right, yeah, he's probably...
Right.
Yeah, he really doesn't look like...
No, and we'll post pictures so you can really see how tall he is. It's crazy. Law enforcement is so shooketh by what he has just told them that Ed's crimes were deemed incomprehensible for a 15-year-old to commit, and he was actually switched over to California's adult legal system. That is not to say he was going to be in a prison with adults, because remember, he was 15, but it definitely didn't make sense for him to be thrown in juvie for murdering 2 people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Ed is given a psychiatric evaluation, and court psychiatrists diagnosed him as a paranoid schizophrenic. And he was committed to Atascadero State Hospital, which was a maximum security facility that houses mentally ill convicts. He was housed among 1,600 inmates. 24 of them were murderers, and 800 of them were sex offenders.
A 15-year-old boy going into this.
With a staff of 10 psychiatrists.
Oh, my God.
For 1,600 inmates, there were 10 psychiatrists.
Jesus.
It was also the inmates, the adult inmates, obviously, that taught him that if you're going to rape someone, you have to kill them.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's just like school for serial killers. That's what they sent him to.
So we're gonna rewind a little.
You should make your noise.
Here we go.
To Ed's childhood. Edmund Emil Kemper III was born in Burbank, California on December 18th, 1948. Burbank. He was the middle child and only son born to Clarnell Elizabeth Kemper and Edmund Emil Kemper Jr. Ed's father was a World War II veteran who, after the war, tested nuclear weapons in the Pacific Proving Grounds before returning to California, where he worked as an electrician. Clarnell, who was divorced twice before, often complained about her husband's, quote, menial electrician job, and he later said, quote, suicide missions in wartime and the atomic bomb testings were nothing compared to living with her. And that Clarnell affected him, quote, more than 396 days and nights of fighting on the front lines did.
Wow.
Oh
what a way, what a marriage.
She made me want to burn the house.
Yeah, seriously.
I want to go back to my nukes.
Seriously. Back to my nukes.
Send me back to the war.
Back to my war.
Ed weighed 13 pounds as a newborn baby.
Jesus.
So Ed weighed 13 pounds, which is 5.9 kilograms for all of our...
Probably homely, I bet.
Non-metric.
Yeah, for our metric
friends.
people. This is a really interesting concept of nature versus nurture. He's like the epitome of that conversation.
Yeah.
Because you can see from the beginning he was fucked right from the beginning, but there are a lot of little parts that make you wonder if things would have been different. But I think he was born, or at least got a lot of them very early on. Like, he recalled that as a young boy, he would sneak out of his house and, armed with his father's bayonet, go to his 2nd grade teacher's house and watch her through her windows. When his sister Susan teased him about kissing the teacher, like, you have a crush on her, Ed responded, quote, if I kiss her, I'd have to kill her first.
Oh.
Which obviously shows that he was thinking about necrophilia before he was even in 3rd grade.
Wow.
In 1957, when Ed was 9, his father left the home, and Clarnell, a now single mother, moved with her 3 children to Helena, Montana.
Oh, shit.
Ed had a close relationship with his father and was devastated when his parents separated. He had a severely dysfunctional relationship with his mother, a neurotic, domineering alcoholic who frequently belittled, humiliated, and abused him.
Oh.
She would do the whole "you don't love me" bullshit that manipulative moms do.
Yep.
And after her husband left her, Clarnell made Ed sleep in a locked basement because she feared that he would molest his sisters. His sister Ellen said that the light, which was a single bulb in the middle of the room, could only be turned on once you got down there, which was really freaky for a 9-year-old. So, like, he had to go down into a dark basement.
Terrible.
Yeah, then turn on the light, yeah. He would scream in his sleep, and he also began to wet the bed.
Oh, shit.
His sister Ellen also said that this is when she really noticed a shift in him being terrified of people.
So, question. His mother was concerned that he would molest his sister. Had anything happened at that point that would have given her that reason to think so? Or she just because he was a boy and she was like, oh, he's a boy. She's developing. He's going to molest her.
She said that she always kind of thought he was weird. Like, she always, like, I was going to say it because, of course, you asked right before I say it. But she regularly mocked him for his large size and called him, like, a real weirdo. She just said he was, like, a weird dude.
So she just stamped him with...
I think, yeah. As soon as she noticed him being, like, a little different, she was like, nope, and locked him up in the basement.
Yeah, I'm going to lock up and ostracize him.
Alan said her mother talked a lot when she really just should have kept her mouth shut. She's like, most people know when to stop talking, and she would just push right past that point.
She was a housewife. She was a real housewife.
She was a real housewife of Helena, Montana.
Yeah.
And she just knew what she was doing, and she would just fuck off right past the point that she should have kept her mouth shut. So, like I said, she regularly mocked him for his large size. At this point, he stood 6'4". She also refused to show him affection out of fear that she would, quote, turn him gay, and told the young Kemper that he reminded her of his father, and no woman would ever love him. He later described his mother as a sick, angry woman, and it is later apparent that she probably suffered from borderline personality disorder.
Yeah, except for fucking something.
Yeah.
Be a bitch.
After his father left, trigger warning, after his father left, Ed exhibited even more antisocial behavior, like cruelty to animals. When he was 10, he buried a cat pet. You guys.
What is a cat? Yeah, what is a cat pedal?
That's what I thought.
Shut up.
And you're tired.
Pet cat. When he was 10, he buried a pet cat alive. Once it died, he dug it up, decapitated it, and mounted its head on a spike. Ed later said that he derived pleasure from successfully lying to his family about killing the cat. And at 13, he killed another family cat by cutting off its head with a bayonet, when he perceived it to be favoring his younger sister over him. And then he kept pieces of it wrapped in a bathrobe in a suitcase in his closet until his mom found them.
So this is why I asked if there had been any signs of, you know, like, because on one hand, yeah, she's a horrible woman with her own mental illness. But on the other hand, like... kid is going around cutting off cats' heads and saving pieces. So
why does he have? Where are the weapons? Who's giving him weapons?
I think
they're in Montana
in the 70s.
That's true in the 70s.
So I think, yeah, and we live really close to Montana, even here in Washington and in Idaho. People have guns everywhere, especially for hunting. You know, people. If you've ever been to a house in like Rathdrum, they have fucking. Heads on the wall and guns everywhere. Like, he probably just had access to them. Ed also had a very dark fantasy life. He performed rituals with his younger sister's dolls where he would remove their heads and hands. Wow. He said, quote, I remember there was actually a sexual thrill. You hear that little pop and pull their heads off and hold them up by the hair. Whipping their heads off, their bodies sitting there, that would get me off.
God.
Blech. He said that he started to have a fantasy about being able to kill the entire world if he prayed hard enough. Ed also loved playing games with his sisters. You want to know what some of his favorite games were?
Doctor or hide and seek or whatever.
Close.
Kill and seek.
Kill and seek.
Seek
and kill.
Seek and kill.
Electric chair and gas chamber were a few of his favorites. He forced his younger sister to tie him up and flip an imaginary switch, and he would then tumble over and writhe on the floor, pretending that he was being executed by gas inhalation or electric shock.
So he could either have been a serial killer or like Stephen King. Like
there's a lot of like
there's like a way you could have turned that.
After I go through the entire the entire thing, it's really interesting to see. I feel similar to him how I feel about Dahmer, in the fact that they both did horrible, can't even fathom it things to humans, but like if something could have been shifted as a kid,
they didn't stand a chance.
You could have been a scientist or like someone a mortician, you know what I mean? You can still do these things in a way that isn't fucking
that's not
awful.
Gonna kill, brutally kill people.
So I almost have this annoying sense of empathy, you know?
Yes.
And I know that we talk a lot about like having empathy for the kid and not the killer, but that's why I think this case is so fascinating to me, because there's kind of always this sense of like, you just kind of feel sad.
I've always felt that way with Ed and Dahmer.
Yeah, it just
learning about their early lives.
It's like you wanted something that should have been achievable. Like, both of them just wanted to be loved, right?
Yes,
but they didn't know how to do that, so they fucking murdered people so that this person would never leave them.
Fully control.
It's crazy. It's crazy to me. Anyway.
And then you watch Mindhunter.
I've got a whole section in here of Mindhunter.
Thank God.
Ed ran away from home in an attempt to reconcile with his father in Van Nuys, California. When he arrived, however, he learned that his father had remarried a fabulous woman named Elfrida.
Elfrida? Is it an A-L?
It's E-L. I literally thought Alfredo, but a little different.
That's what I was thinking.
Elfrida. She was this beautiful blonde German woman. The picture that they show of her in the documentary, she just looks like a fabulous human. He also had a stepson. Elfrida found Ed to be kind of creepy. Shocking, I know.
Yeah.
According to Ed, he would just sit and stare at her. And allegedly, she caught him watching her undress and was like, out of this fucking house. Like, nope. Over Christmas, his father, Ed Kemper Jr., took him to his grandparents' house in North Fork, California to visit. And then when it was time to leave,
I knew it.
He just left him there.
Oh my God.
So that's how he got to live with his grandparents that he later murdered. Kemper hated living in North Fork, and he's even more isolated now because he's in the middle of fucking nowhere. And he described his grandfather as senile and said that his grandmother was, quote, constantly emasculating me and my grandfather. David Dozier was a neighbor and friend of Ed's. And David, being the shortest in their class and Ed being the tallest, it was a running...
God.
What? Are you just picturing them?
I'm sure that there was a running joke around that.
It was a running joke that if someone messed with David, they'd have to go through Ed first. And when he was interviewed later, he said he would have never thought Ed would have done what he did. He even said, like, there were some people in school that would have been like, oh yeah, totally, that guy would totally murder someone, but Ed, like, was not that guy. Ed said that he hated high school, and girls would giggle over his height, and he said that he had fantasies of blowing them away with a gun.
Okay.
Now we're after the double homicide of his grandparents. So while at Atascadero State Hospital, Big Ed quickly gained popularity by doctors and law enforcement because he was just so fascinating to them. He was a model prisoner, he was calm, and even shy most of the time. And he was also extremely smart. So doctors start giving him test after test, evaluating him and testing his IQ levels. And he is found to be at near genius levels.
God, that's not good. On top of all that shit.
Yeah, his IQ was 145. And Ed gets so good at the test that he eventually convinces them to let him give tests to the other inmates. This weird 15-year-old murderer is giving psychiatric evaluations to murderers and rapists, okay? He starts sharpening pencils at 17, and then at 19 starts giving out scoring and filing the tests for the other inmates. The longer he's at the hospital, the more the doctors evaluating him begin to second-guess his paranoid schizophrenia diagnosis, and because he's a brilliant asshole, he learns how to cheat the system into basically making everyone around him think he's completely rehabilitated. In 1969, Ed turns 21, and doctors at this point are convinced that he has been completely rehabilitated, and he is released from Atascadero State Hospital on parole in December of that year. He not only managed to convince the doctors he was reformed, but he also was able to have his juvenile records sealed forever as well. Which meant that any job he applied for, they would not see that he murdered 2 people when he was 15.
His grand fucking parents.
Though doctors advise against it, Ed goes back to live with his mother, who had since remarried, taken the surname Strandberg, and then divorced again. So he went to go live with his mother, and that was about 200 miles from his grandparents' farm in North Fork. He said later in interviews that even though he was 21, sexually he was still 15. And all those years of sexual experimenting as a teen had been halted because all of those years he had spent in a mental hospital with a bunch of sex offenders and murderers. So he had no idea how to talk to women. He had no idea, like, all the things that you learn as a teenager.
Yeah.
About those types of things. Yeah,
shit.
Social things. He just doesn't have those. So he said sexually he was still 15. And he was still a virgin as well. He also said in this interview that he thought he might be impotent, where he said he can get an erection, but, quote, nothing comes out. Ew.
Oh, Edward, what?
Edmund.
Edmund.
Close. You were close. That was, you were right on the same page. Also, I read that he had a small wiener, and the fact that he was huge made it look even smaller. And then I said, so ha ha ha. But all these things just really pissed him off more. The city of Santa Cruz is nearby to where he's living with his mother. And Santa Cruz is a college town where Ed's mother, Clarnell, works as an
Goodbye. We'll see you guys later.
Yeah, bye.
It was a great episode, everybody.
Oh my God.
One of our best.
Yeah, seriously. Clarnell works as an administrative assistant to the provost, which is kind of like a dean. And Ed convinces his mother to give him a parking pass so that he is able to come and go as he pleases to the UC Santa Cruz campus. And he told her it was so he could use the library. So a little bit about Santa Cruz. The college had only been around for about 6 years, so it was really opening up like a whole new world for young women. So this was at a time where women were busting out of the norm. It was kind of a running joke that women didn't go to college for bachelor's degrees. They went for Mrs. degrees. And women were trying to move past that idea, like, we can do all the same things men can do. And, in the 50s
Sometimes better.
Yeah, sometimes better. In the 50s was wives stay home, have babies. And then, like, the 70s, women were like, fuck that.
Let's go do some
Let's
fucking
go
coke.
to fucking college.
Let's
go do some
things.
coke. Let's go do whatever the fuck we want. Women who went to college were called co-eds, and it meant that the college accepted men and women. But only women were referred to as co-eds. But the term was sexualized immediately. So co-ed porn was going crazy at the time in the 70s. And again, women were really trying to break free from that stigma. Hitchhiking was also very popular at the time. Lots of times students had jobs but couldn't afford cars, and buses ran around town but only at specific times. So hitchhiking became the most popular way of transportation for college students. A lot of the women said that this actually made them feel really independent. They were figuring it out. They were just able to, like, find someone to...
When they needed.
Yeah, when they needed, and they got to meet new people.
Uber and then...
Yeah, they got their Uber. They met new people, and it didn't cost them any money.
I mean, essentially, it's Uber without
the app.
Yeah.
I have to say this sentence because Betsy asked me to. So I'm just going to read my little bullet point one more time to really add. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women said this made them feel independent. They were figuring it out. They got to meet new people, and hitchhiking didn't cost any money. Everyone was doing it and doing it and doing it well. And then in big capital letters, I put Pussy Willow. Thanks to Betsy, Pussy Willow is now in the episode forever.
Happy birthday, Betsy.
Happy birthday, Betsy. There was one computer for the Santa Cruz Sheriff's Office, and it was in the basement. But they were able to use it to search criminal histories. Paul Doherty, a chief criminologist in the Mind of a Monster documentary that is on Discovery Plus, said there was no DNA at the time, but this really was the golden age of criminalistics because they were still able to use other types of technology, like microscopes, fingerprints. Skulls were able to be used to reconstruct what someone looked like, things like that. And he also said that the weather in Santa Cruz would cause a fairly quick decomposition within 6 to 8 weeks. Most of the flesh from a person would be gone, but the teeth were the most crucial. So back to Ed. He's still on parole, right? He's left the state hospital. He's living with his mom. Being a model parolee, that's what the police are seeing. He attended community college for a while and was doing well. During this time, his relationship with his mother, Clarnell, remained toxic and hostile. The two had frequent arguments that their neighbors often overheard. Kemper later said, quote, "My mother and I started right in on horrendous battles, just horrible battles, violent and vicious. I've never been in such a vicious verbal battle with anyone. I remember one roof raiser was over whether I should have my teeth cleaned or not."
One roof raiser.
Roof raiser.
I'll raise you one roof.
Jim Connor was a friend of Ed's, and he actually met him when he sold tires to gas stations, and one of the gas stations was where Ed was working at the time. So when Jim became a cop in 1970, the first thing he did was go and show off his new car to his best friend, Ed. And he was actually the one who suggested that Ed might consider becoming a police officer. Mm-hmm. He decides to apply to be a state trooper, and Ed ultimately gets turned down for this position solely because of his size. At this point, he is 6'9" and 300 pounds.
I didn't know he was 6'9".
Yeah. But at this point, his record is sealed. So when they apply, they don't see he literally, when he applies, they see he didn't kill 2 people. And his size was the only reason he was denied. I don't know why the size would be that, but
he probably couldn't fit in the cars, honestly.
I don't have a uniform or a badge or a vehicle for you.
Could,
Sorry.
Well, and he might not have been very fast to, like, chase down suspects.
Right. Even though he's denied, he quickly becomes friends with a lot of the officers. Even though Ed was shy and a literal murderer, he got along with this group of guys. They would hang out at a bar in town called the Jury Room, and he quickly became the gentle giant Big Ed. Ed said he would just drink and become a real dumbass. He said he could really make them think that he would never do anything like what he was going to do. Mm-hmm. He said, quote, "The cops were just looking for somebody really slick and sly, and I wasn't. Ed's just a meatball. He's a nice guy, but he doesn't really do anything." It's just a meatball.
Is that what he said about himself?
Yeah, that's what he said about himself. That he wanted people to say, like, he wouldn't do that. He's just a meatball.
But, like, how weird to think, though, that, like, you know, he was friends with all of these guys, and they all thought he was this gentle giant. Like, that's gotta be...
He said knowing that they thought he was a nice guy made him feel cute inside. After he's denied to be a state trooper, he gets a job with the California DOT as a flagger. A steady job that pays well, which also confirms to the parole board that Ed Kemper really is rehabilitated and is officially a contributing member of society. The same year he began working...
Contributing to their death toll.
Yep.
The same year that he began working for the Highway Division, Kemper was hit by a car while riding a motorcycle that he had bought, and his arm was badly injured, and he received a $15,000 settlement in the civil suit, which would be about $90,000 to $100,000 now. With part of his settlement money, it's like I just break down for a second. With part of his settlement money, he bought a 1969 nice Ford Galaxy. In the fall of 1972, his entire juvenile record is completely expunged, which I knew what expunging meant, but like I still wanted to Google it for sure. So an expungement proceeding is a type of lawsuit in which a first-time offender, which I didn't know, of a prior criminal conviction seeks that the records of that earlier process be sealed or destroyed, making the records non-existent or unavailable to the general public. I didn't know it was only with a first-time offender. So, which makes sense for teenagers, why records are able to be expunged. The last report from his probation psychiatrist read, quote, "If I were to see this patient without having any history available or getting any history from him, I would think that we're dealing with a very well-adjusted young man who had initiative, intelligence, and who was free of any psychiatric illnesses. It is my opinion that he has made a very excellent response to the years of treatment and rehabilitation, and I would see no psychiatric reason to consider him to be any danger to himself or any member of society. And since it may allow him more freedom as an adult to develop his potential, I would consider it reasonable to have a permanent expunction of his juvenile records." When he saved enough money, Kemper moved out to live with a friend in Alameda, California. There, he still complained of being unable to get away from his mother because she regularly phoned him and paid him surprise visits. He had no boundaries with that woman. He also often had financial difficulties, which resulted in him returning to his mother's apartment in Aptos? It's somewhere in California. In the fall of that year, Santa Cruz police see a huge spike in the number of disappearances and murders in their small coastal town.
Mm-hmm.
In August of 72, a skull is found in the Santa Cruz Mountains. According to dental records, it's a 19-year-old college student named Mary Ann. I don't know if it's Pesci or Pesh. I've heard it both, but it looks like Pesci, so I'm going to say Pesci. 19-year-old college student named Mary Ann Pesci, a student out of Fresno, who had gone missing nearby in Berkeley with her friend Anita Lucchesa. They were hitchhiking to Stanford University campus when they were last seen. In mid-September, a teenage girl, Aiko Ku, goes missing from Berkeley. She disappears while she's catching a bus to San Francisco for a ballet class. Her friend Hazel Bright said she last saw Aiko while she was waiting for the bus. She spotted her from across the street and called to her. And she remembered not seeing her in a while, so she was super stoked that she was there. And she's like, dude, Aiko, what's up? Aiko couldn't see her, but Hazel said that she saw her put out her thumb to hitchhike and was surprised that she was doing it because both of them were just 15.
Oh.
Then Hazel's bus showed up and she got on. By mid-October, things have escalated exponentially when on Friday the 13th, a homeless man named Lawrence White is found dead after being beaten to death with a baseball bat. That same month, a woman named Mary goes missing after she doesn't show up for a job interview. In early November, a priest is beaten and stabbed to death in his own confessional booth.
Jeez.
My God.
Yeah. And everyone is horrified at this point. Everybody's fucking dying and they have no idea what the fuck is going on. And again, we're in the 70s, and according to statistics, 90% of the murders at the time were not premeditated. They were due to like a fight at a bar where like the only reasons people were normally dying, and suddenly all these people are just turning up dead. The information police were putting out were things like don't hitchhike, don't go into deserted areas. But because law enforcement was only letting out a small amount of information on what was happening, people felt that it was more of a harassment campaign to stop hitchhiking, so people didn't really take it seriously. And once again, 70s, anti-war rallies, there was a lot of distrust between the community and law enforcement. So everyone just, no one was listening to anyone.
Yeah.
Police weren't putting out any information and we weren't listening to it. The rumors floating around town were really focused on an outsider coming into their town to commit these crimes. They're like, there's no way someone in our community is doing this. So rumors started coming out that it was probably a cult or someone in a commune somewhere.
Well,
again,
probably
70s.
We won't find out till later.
Yeah. But law enforcement believed it to be somewhere local. The police end up talking about their crimes at their favorite bar after work, the jury room, with their bestie, Big Ed.
Mm-hmm.
So they tell him all the details of the murders and how they have no idea who could be doing something like that, and they have no leads and no evidence and nowhere to go. And a lot of the people interviewed said that when he would come to the jury room, he was always there, but he was never really part of the conversation. He was just kind of there listening. He would just add something every once in a while, but it was almost like you kind of forgot he was there. And it's because he was studying, right?
Yep.
He was listening and he was studying and he was keeping up on... I mean, hate to break it to you, but a lot of the people I just mentioned, he killed. So,
yeah. Well, and
spoiler.
I mean, you know, if you're a psychopath and you're sitting with a bunch of cops talking about, like,
how smart you
he must have just been reveling.
Oh, yeah. He's been so hard for himself. Oh, wait, he can't be.
Nothing comes out with a small dick.
In January of 73, another woman goes missing. And parts of her dismembered body wash up on a Santa Cruz shore, and she is identified as 19-year-old Cindy Shaw. The following day, after Cindy's skull is identified, 2 families and their children were fatally shot and stabbed, resulting in 5 more murders in a single day.
Wow. Holy fuck.
Also, this is a random piece of information that I decided to put in here, but I could find nothing else about it. Here you go. At a Santa Cruz beach, Kemper met a student from Turlock High School to whom he became engaged in March 1973.
Whoa.
The engagement was broken off after Kemper's arrest, and his fiance's parents requested her name not to be revealed to the public.
Holy shit.
Wow.
So he was also engaged to a high school student while this was happening.
Oh my fucking God.
Yeah. On February 5th, 2 more co-eds, Rosalind Thorpe and Alice Liu, also go missing. And the day following that, 4 teenage boys are shot and killed at a state park north of Santa Cruz. That is 2 murder sprees and 2 more missing college students in 12 days. On February 12th, another set of remains is found, but this one is the worst yet. The victim was not only stabbed, but also dissected. The next day, the police receive a phone call after an old man gardening his lawn is shot in his lawn in the middle of the fucking day. Luckily, this time they were able to catch the killer. A man named Herbert Mullen. Similar to Big Ed, he just kind of calmly goes with the police when he's caught. The dissected remains are identified by dental records as Mary, the young woman who never showed up to her job interview back in October. And apparently, in some of the cases, there were 2 distinct ways the bodies had been mutilated. So some of the bodies were dismembered very cleanly, while some were more chaotic and jagged. And so at this point, they have Herb in custody, and they're thinking, is he the one who's killing all these people? And then they're like, fuck, I don't actually know if he's the only one killing all these people. And of course, they want it to be the case, but it just doesn't fit. And so they're like, fuck, we just can't prove it. So after Herb's arrest, more bodies begin to turn up, which really shows that...
Herb or Herb?
I don't know. I'm saying Herb. Herb.
You're saying Herb.
I'm going to call him Mullen. How about I call him Mullen?
What was it?
Herbert. It's Herbert. I'll call him Herbert.
Herbie.
Whatever. It's
Call him Herbie.
Call him Herbie.
After Herbie's arrest, more bodies begin to turn up. And in early March, some hikers in San Mateo County come across a skull and a jawbone. Once law enforcement arrives, they notice that the jawbone does not match the skull, but they're able to find a matching skull nearby after performing a search. After taking the remains back to test them, the skulls are identified as Rosalind and Alice, who had gone missing 1 month earlier. So, Rosalind, who was known as Roz, was described by her friend Louita Spangler, who was also a USC student, as, you're going to love this, quote, a feminist lesbian who is all-American and makes really good pies. These bodies have that neat style of dismemberment, and because Herbie is in custody, they're now positive that there's a second killer out there. The Santa Cruz County District Attorney's Office charged Herbie with 10 murders, even though he killed 13. And Mullen admitted to all the crimes, and therefore the trial focused on whether he was sane and culpable for his actions. On August 19th, he was declared guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder and 8 counts of second-degree murder. And he was sentenced to life imprisonment in the Santa Cruz County Jail, and he has been denied parole 8 times since 1980. And he is in Ione, California. Mullen said that while he was in custody, he committed his crimes only in an attempt to save the environment. Herbie Mullen actually shared adjoining cells with Ed at one point at the California Medical Facility. Kemper recalled, quote, well, Mullen had a habit of singing and bothering people when somebody tried to watch TV. So I threw water on him to shut him up. Then he was a good boy. I'd give him some peanuts. Herbie liked peanuts. That was effective because pretty soon he asked permission to sing. That's called behavior modification treatment.
Oh
my God.
On April 3rd, 1973, Mickey Alufi, who is an officer with the Santa Cruz Sheriff's Department, got a notification of a dealer's record for a sale of a .44 Magnum in the name of Edmund Emil Kemper III. Something I learned. All of his guns were bought legally. However, when Mickey Alufi gets, because, everything is manually, so he literally gets a piece of paper that says, hey, this dude bought this .44 Magnum. Apparently a .44 Magnum is a huge gun. So Mickey Alufi's like,
why do you need such a big gun?
Yeah, he just was like,
is it because of your little tiny penis?
He's like, I'm going to look into this. And he is police, so I don't know if you can search past an expunged record if you're police. Yeah. But he looks into his background, and he saw the expunged file showing the double homicide from when he was 15. And the police are like, huh, interesting. And they're like, well, we're not sure if because his records are expunged, if we could use that against him. Like, if they could use that as a good enough reason that he could be killing all these people, right? Yeah. So they're like, let's just confiscate the handgun until we can get an answer from a judge on, like, the correct way to go about this. So they arrive at Ed's house to confiscate the new gun. He pulls up, and they explained the situation to him. Ed was very calm, very cooperative, and said, "The gun is in my trunk." He pulled his keys out to unlock it, and each officer instinctively moved to each side of the car while he's unlocking it. They open the trunk, confiscate the gun, and later Ed told them that if they had not gone to either side of the car when he went to unlock the trunk, he was probably going to kill them both. And then he said after this, an idea just popped into his mind. The idea of killing his mother. Because at this point, he's like, the cops are here, they're confiscating my gun, they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so he's like...
He knows he's about done.
He knows he's about done.
You gotta get his shit done.
And just before Easter, police receive an interesting phone call that will make them question everything they thought they knew about this investigation.
Yes, that noise.
Or it reminds me of Only Murders in the Building when, what does he say? This turns the investigation into a whole new direction. So this is where we're going to end part 1. I know the last couple episodes have been 2-parters. We did not plan it that way. It's just kind of how it happened. Be sure to listen next week where we're going to tell you about the phone call that Ed made to the police and each of Ed Kemper's victims. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. We put out new episodes every single Wednesday, and if you're impatient like me, be sure to become a Patreon where you can get your episodes early each week. For as little as $2 a month, you not only significantly support the production of this podcast, but you'll also get extra benefits and perks for being one of our special Patreon Weirdlings. Go to patreon.com/threesacrime for more information. For all of our links related to our socials, affiliate codes, where to listen, and everything else, go to linktree/threesacrime.